Hello, welcome back again. This is SlushHeap 201. It is an interview with Aaron Wood. It's actually a one-on-one interview, just Aaron and myself. So let's get started. But Aaron, before we, well, first of all, I want to welcome you back to the show again. You know, you're just a great person to have. You have so much knowledge to share with our audience. But before we go into what's happening today, let's go back a few minutes, into your past, and we'll see where you started. And I think that's important. There's probably people out there that are thinking that right now. I want to get into this, into that. And we should mention, Aaron is not an author. Am I correct?
Yes.
You are a graphic artist.
I can't write my way out of a paper bag.
Authors are looking like, why am I watching this? No. You're going to need a graphic artist, and we'll explain later on in the show. So, your contribution to the book world comes through your graphic arts. What influenced you to create the posters in the first place?
Well, when I joined Google Plus more than 2 years ago now, during the beta, I was finding a lot of people had this deep-seated kind of hatred towards anything that wasn't Google, like Facebook or Apple or Twitter or anything like that. So I pictured it like they were waging this war against other social medias, and other social media sites were waging wars against other ones. So I said to myself, what had the best, what war had the best propaganda look to it, and that was probably World War II. So I drew on that style and came up with the first few social media propaganda posters that I think really kind of nailed the feeling that you would get if you were part of these camps, and you were waging war against another faction. In this case, it would be like Facebook and Twitter. And I've done a lot of designs since then, and each one I sit down and think about pretty carefully, and it's a lot of fun.
That's great. And certainly I've looked at a lot of them. You can see behind me our wall, our SlushHeap wall. I have one of your posters up there in a small format. What I'm hoping is to get a couple of them from you to even have you sign them, so we can keep them up there on a permanent basis.
Excellent.
Definitely. So the next question I would have to ask then, did you actually attend classes in, let's say, art or graphics, or are you self-taught?
A little of both. I do have my associates in visual arts, and I also have my bachelor's in illustration. I went to school in a small community college back where I'm from, and I also attended the Art Institute of Boston, and did that. And then I self-taught myself a lot of things, and then one of my first jobs out of college was working for a print shop. So I got to know a lot of the behind the scenes that go into actually printing of these designs, and there's a lot that designers need to know about these kinds of things, and that some of them really don't know, and having this knowledge kind of gives you a leg up on some of these other designers out there.
I can understand what you're saying there. So it's almost, boy, I hate to compare it this way, but initially the graphics artist, like a union worker, you are focusing on one thing only, but by doing so, you're missing the whole concept.
Exactly.
And I can understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, you kind of want to be a jack of all trades. You want to pick up a little bit of knowledge from each thing. I'm not saying to not be good entirely at one thing, which you should, but know about printing, know what goes into putting a cover as an ebook, about thumbnail size and things like that. Learn a little bit about each thing, and it'll just kind of make you more well-rounded in the end.
Okay, that's great. That's something that I guess I've never, being an artist myself, I never had to think about the magic word here is thumbnail.
Yeah.
That's something that as an artist I never had to worry about. Everything I did was on canvas. And you certainly didn't shrink that canvas.
Nope.
Because even if you sold it someplace, which I never did anywhere on the internet, but it would still come up as a fairly large picture.
Yep.
My unfortunate thing, I'm not an artist like you. You can do art on demand. I never had that mindset. I have to be in the mood, and when I'm in the mood, watch out. I mean, I fly, you know. And
Yeah.
then for a year, I won't do anything. So I envy you guys that can just go and sit down because you know it's part of your job,
Hmm.
you know, and you have to love that kind of job.
I
Yeah.
do. I love making solutions for my clients. I love giving them what they want, something that is best going to represent them and their creation.
Right,
So if you're
right.
working on a book and they give it to a graphic artist, you want that book to be represented by the cover. That's what everybody's going to read first, or see first, I mean, and then they're going to pick that up based off that. I just did a job for a client. And he honestly believes that my cover redesign, he had done a cover originally, and it did fairly well, and then I did a redesign for him, and he almost doubled his free giveaway that he did, and his sales have picked up. And he believes it's a number of factors, but one of them is because of my cover redesign and making it more eye-catching.
I think that's, again, there's a key word that's got to be eye-catching.
Hmm.
And, you know, the thing is that amazes me is the posters that you have out there, and you just mentioned you got Google posters, Twitter posters, Facebook posters,
Hmm.
and now I see even Star Trek.
Yes,
You know,
I added some Star Trek
I
stuff.
saw them for the first time today. They're great.
Thank you.
You know, it's, you know, the art you use. Is there a term? I mean, there are genres in books, and there are terms for artwork. What would you call that? What you
Uh,
use?
well, I love Art Deco also. You know, anything from the 20s, 30s. So I love anything with that gradient in it, that bold colors. Just stuff that's and simple and clean for the most part. There's Art Deco that's not so simple and clean, but yeah. And I was at a convention recently, and I got this idea in my head to do one of these posters, and it was like you said, when you get the inspiration, it hits you like lightning, and you go. You have to design these things. So when I got home, I took my initial sketch and I wound up doing 6 different posters instead of just one. And I did one for each kind of generation of the show and the new movies. And I think it kind of all worked out in the end. You know, it makes a nice set, all 6 of them.
Yeah, that's I think that's really great. Now you were talking about book covers, and well, I guess didn't stop there. You got book covers and illustrations that you're
Yes.
doing nowadays, right?
Yep. I did a project with some other Google Plus people for themethology, and they were working on this concept anthology of invasion. That was the theme behind it. It was all stories about invasion, and I was approached to do 2 illustrations for 2 of the interior stories, and then combine those into a cover. And what it wound up being was those 2 illustrations stayed inside, and then I wound up doing a brand new piece for the cover a few days before the launch, because there were some negative feedback on how the whole cover was laid out, and we said, you know what, we're going to make this a really strong piece. We all worked together, and it all kind of worked out in the end, and everybody on the project was really thankful, and I really enjoyed working with everybody, and it turned out really well.
Okay. Well, let's continue talking about book covers.
Hmm.
You know, and again, like I said, I don't read as many books as my wife does, but they lay around the house, so I get to see them all laying there. And to me, there are those book covers that are fairly simple in designs. You know, romance novels always seem to have that 1 or 2 naked bodies pressing
Hmm.
up against each other,
Yep.
and you don't see the heads. You just see then the bold print all over the place, and the
Hmm.
man's name that wrote it, and that's about it. Uh,
Yep.
Yet, like, then there's others that seem very busy,
Hmm.
and I have a feeling the book that Darcy and I wrote, I had an initial book cover that I designed for it. Well, it wasn't designed for it. It was a painting I did some 40 years ago
Hmm.
of this airplane that I flew in.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with that. So
Well,
you're the
yeah,
actually artist behind that.
What's that?
You're the artist behind that cover, because I've seen that cover displayed before on Google Plus, and I was wondering who the actual artist was.
That's
So
me.
that's your work. Wow,
That's
nice.
me.
Excellent.
But see, I think it's too busy for a book cover now that you've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to get you. I'm glad you saw it, because otherwise you've been answering something that without seeing it.
Yeah.
See, that's a busy one. And so, in your take, which way is the best way to go?
It's so tough because sometimes when you're dealing with a very popular author, the name alone sells the book. The cover could look whatever. I mean, right now I'm reading book 5 of Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I mean, the Song of Ice and Fire series, and they've redesigned those covers recently. They're very stark. They're just words and then like an icon or a small image, and they're selling it based on his name. And then some authors like J.K. Rowling have very, very nice illustrations on the cover of their books, very, fanciful, all the Harry Potter stuff. And then you have a lot of indie authors that usually go the route of just some stock photography or some stock footage, and that's all they can afford. A lot of it also comes down to the fact that some people can't afford to hire a graphic designer to come up with a solution for them. And I hate to say it, and I don't want to sound egotistical, but there are some really bad graphic designers out there who, and it doesn't have to just be the fact that the cover illustration can be phenomenal, but you could choose the wrong type. You could choose the type would be too small. Not enough emphasis on the title, not enough emphasis on the author. There are a whole bunch of different things that go into this formula for creating a successful book cover. And one of them, like I said, is the name on that cover. Is it a popular author? If it's an indie author, is it somebody that's well known in more indie circles? Is it somebody you've never heard of? And then you have to fall back on maybe the illustration for the cover. But like I said, even things that come down to the typography, the font you choose, the size of the font, everything kind of all should work together and be harmonious. You can have a cover that's very stark without much imagery on it, maybe an icon, but that icon is key to that story, something that's going to stick in the reader's mind, something that's intriguing. Sometimes creating some mystery on a book cover and not giving the person all, the potential reader, all the answers is enough to get them to pick that book up.
Okay. Well, see, that's you touched on a lot of things that I was, mulling over in my mind, and that is the fact that I think one of the things that's wrong with my particular cover is that the title is too dark. I think like you said, the title almost has to jump out at you.
Yeah,
it certainly is not the author in this case.
Yeah.
Because even though if they Google me, I may end up third on Google.
Yeah.
Because the first Rudi Fischer was a great race car driver in Germany. So he's number 1. Unfortunately, the number 2 man, that's Rudi Fischer, is my son.
Oh, he's got a bigger resume.
So I had to take third seat, Yeah. But the thing was, so it's not me that they're really coming to see, The thing I wanted to do when I thought about a cover was I wanted to take a piece of the book, something out of the book, and actually make that into a scene. And I had done that scene a long, long time ago, almost as a remedy to my PTSD, which I didn't know I had.
Gotcha.
If you draw it, and you draw the good things you remember as being good, maybe you'll forget the things that are bad.
So it was definitely art therapy for you.
Yeah.
I
ended up going through 5 psychiatrists before one of them finally went out of the box and absolutely yelled at me.
Wow.
That what if, and psychiatrists don't do what if, they just, what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's more on you than it is on them. They're there to listen.
And he was reading my background and he just looked at me and he says, so you're blaming yourself for this death? And I said, yes. well, why? Well, if I would have been 5 minutes faster, it would have been different. And he said, yeah, if you had been 5 minutes faster, you'd all be dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, I never thought of that one,
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's the same here. I look at this, and although the painting is not bad, I don't think anyhow, I don't think it's what the book requires to become noticed.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There's so many reasons I did it. You said fond. Fond is very important.
Your font, yeah, definitely.
Now, the reason I chose the fond I did is because it is a Germanic type fond that you would see on the Red Baron's airplane. His cross was done in that style.
Oh yeah.
So being German, I thought, well, that's good. But you know what? Again, that doesn't get you noticed. Yeah. Maybe from those on the dark side, but not the rest of them. So it's interesting the fact that you have all these pointers, and maybe you and I should get together one time. And
definitely. Before
I publish this thing in hard copy.
Yeah.
See what we can come up with.
It's funny though, because sometimes you can really overthink things. I like to, when I design my posters, I like to put little, not really hidden things, but further meaning behind things. Like if I'm doing a poster for coffee, I put some coffee rings on there, like somebody actually set a mug or two down on the piece. Okay. Little things to it. But sometimes, you can put things in there that have meaning to mainly yourself, but they don't convey that meaning readily to the reader. The reader might think, okay, that font is very busy, but to you, you're like, I picked this font for a specific reason, and you're not wrong to pick it. It's a personal choice. You're not just randomly stabbing in the dark and throwing a font on there. It has some meaning to you. So sometimes you have to make those tough choices and say, is this going to connect with my readers on a personal level and on an artistic level? Is it going to work both ways? And sometimes you really need to kind of draw back from the personal feelings about it, and it kind of stinks because you really want to put all your feelings into this cover, because most writing is kind of a labor of love, and you want to just design more for that clarity, that eye-catching ability of the cover, which sometimes you just have to step back and do that.
Well, and I don't want to give away any secrets, so you don't have to necessarily answer this whole question. But sure. For our audience who are would-be authors, new authors, people that want to get into the business, and I would tell them right away, if they're not graphic artists, hire somebody to do that for you. I believe that. The only reason I took a stab at it, because like I said, I was good in one media, but I'm not necessarily, I do not do graphic art. So my question to you is, if they wanted to try it, what would you recommend they start with as a program to do their own graphic arts?
Well, it depends on their budget, because you could go out there and get an older version of Photoshop, subscribe to their new Creative Cloud services. But GIMP is a free image manipulation program that's similar to Photoshop. That's GIMP, GIMP. That's all open source. It's been around for years. It's progressed nicely. It's got a lot of Photoshop features, and I know a lot of people who can't afford to pick up the whole Photoshop and Illustrator and that kind of stuff. They can use that. You can do a lot of research into free programs. There's and even just sitting down and sketching on with pen and paper, pencil and paper, colored pencil, and getting your ideas out there. You might think, oh, I'm terrible, but getting your stuff down on paper is good, because it gets your ideas out there when you're trying to describe to a graphic artist. Say, yes, you can't afford these programs, but you want to work with a graphic designer. Just sit down and sketch, and then send that sketch to your designer in the end. And maybe your artwork isn't up to par, or your design isn't up to par with a traditional, a well-established graphic designer. but sometimes you can go for it and it works. It's tough, because you don't want to be the jerk that says your stuff stinks to somebody else. And sometimes you have to. I always try to step in with kind of a helpful hand and guide people. When I do conventions, I have people come up to me, and I've had people in the past bring their portfolios up to me, and sometimes this stuff is really truly bad. But you know what? I try to find one good thing about everybody's portfolio, about everybody's work, whether it's their, a lot of stuff. When I used to do my own comic book, they'd come up to me with their comic book stuff. So their art isn't the best, but maybe their panel design is good, or their dialogue is great. Maybe they're a great writer, but they just don't have the artistic skills. So maybe I recommend a different artist to them that they can pair their writing up with. Not everybody is going to be a full bag. There's a lot of stuff I can't do that other artists out there can. And as an author, yeah, you might not be the best designer or artist out there, but if you just try a little bit, you might break through on a few things, and then maybe you'll feel better about going to somebody who can design, but you know that you've tried. And in the end, and some people just don't have enough time either. They spend time writing, and when they're done with one project, they go right into something else.
Right.
And there's all sorts of factors that keep people from being their own designers. Okay. And some people are a triple threat. They write, they edit, and they do design, so they can do everything all themselves. So well, if that's their choice, we'll leave it go at that. Yeah.
But it's funny because as you're saying these things, my mind is racing, and like I said, my media was always. I started out with charcoals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and because of my job in the service, and the reason I got that job is because I have a photographic memory. So
okay.
They tell me, okay, which is actually haunting, because just like a computer, they say as you get older, you will lose places to store that memory. It just isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Because it dies off. But my wife and I used to go constantly for a weekend someplace, and I would see a scene, and I would go home, and 6 months later I would get the canvas out, and I would finally put it on canvas. It might be a mill, it might be just a scene I seen someplace. So I had no problem doing that. But then again, because I'm not motivated, I would quit for a year or two, and we had the good fortune to go to Australia when my youngest son, Rudi, graduated from high school. We took him to Australia. And it's a place I had worked with a lot of Australians in Vietnam, but I had never been there. Well, the thing that I spent my time with was the Aborigines.
Okay.
Now, their form of art, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, is totally different than ours. So I made up this thing that their art being dots, okay, our art being the stroke of the brush, I'm going to call European type art.
Okay.
So I watched these guys, and they showed me what they used to do with sand. They would paint with sand, and then as soon as they were done, they would have their dances around it, and then would hope for a wind to blow it all away. And it took a white man years and years and years to convince them not to have it blow away. Save it for others to see.
Yeah.
So this gentleman I met over there, he was an Aboriginal. He was actually a PhD, fantastic man, and he did 4 by 6 foot paintings with one dot at a time. Now you know how they do it. They use the paintbrush, but not the brush end. They use the back of the brush. They dip it in paint and they put a dot. If they want the dots to get smaller, they go dot, 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 and then it gets smaller each time on its own.
Yeah.
So I learned from him in the course of 1 week. And I came back, and I had to try it. I just sat down and I thought, I was enthusiastic again. So what I did is I drew a branch of a tree and colored it in with oils where it was fall time. But the leaves were in European style. They were really painted.
Okay.
And then I placed a butterfly on the branch, and it was all done in dots. And the one thing he challenged me, he said, count your dots.
Okay.
And I said, okay, not that I know why. Well, to do this butterfly, 280,000 dots.
Wow. Wow.
And I was not even close to what he did.
Yeah.
He had one that he took to New York that was 4 million dots. And he got a beautiful price out of it.
Wow.
So it encouraged me. Now, here's the kicker, what you're saying. My oldest son had a father-in-law who is an artiste. Okay. He has his own studio in New York. Mm-hmm. He has his own studio in in Florida. And he has his own studio up in Maine someplace. But his main gallery is in New York, Fifth Avenue or something like that. And he came for Thanksgiving dinner one day. And his daughter is there, my son is there. And she says, Dad, you got to show him the new painting you just did. She says, Dad, you got to see this. This is really great. So I bring it out. And it's about a 2 foot by 30 inches, roughly. Okay. And I put it there, and he looks at it, and he says, it's very cartoonish. That's it. Okay.
That's it. That's all the critique.
Basically, all it was too cartoonish. So then she said, Dad, how can you say that? He says, the colors are all wrong. You know. So I said, well, I'll have to see one of your paintings to see how my colors are wrong, because this is what I envision nature to be like. It's real. Yeah. You know, I didn't paint a butterfly from Mars. Well, all of his paintings were always dark purples, blues, different hues of blues, and maybe a little yellow in them. That's all of his landscape was ever.
Wow.
Nothing different. I said, you know what? He said, I get a lot of money for these. I said, well, good for you, because I wouldn't give you 2 cents.
Wow.
So you're right. I mean, there are people that, don't have that way of,
that tact.
Tact. There you go. There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, well, haven't gotten that much done. I got to go back on what you just said something earlier, your comic book phase. We didn't even talk about that today. What brought you into that?
I grew up collecting comics. I inherited all my mom's old comics, and I always wanted to draw my own comic. I hooked up with a few of my friends. We all got together and formed our own little company. This is when I was much younger, like early 20s, and we decided to make a comic book. And then, it took many, many, many years for us to finally put something out. But actually, this year is the 10th anniversary of the printing of our first issue, this month, actually. And we finally got the funds up. We did crowdsourcing back in 2003, before there was Kickstarter, and I know I've come on your show. I've talked about crowdfunding.
Yes.
But we finally self-published our own comic book. The art wasn't the best. The writing was great. But we did it, and we ended up doing 2 more issues over the course of the next 3 years. And it was a labor of love, but I can now say that I've self-published a comic book, and we used to take it to conventions and sell it, and we put it in a few stores. We made some sales. I can proudly say I've shipped comic books off to Australia, so we're international, we're global. It was an interesting thing, and I would change a lot of things if I ever did it again. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do. Yep.
It's strange because my youngest son, his first love was to go into art, not movies, art. He wanted to be in a Disney studio. So he practiced, and he actually got a scholarship for the Art Institute of Philadelphia and went for a year for free. And I was surprised the talent the raw talent he had already. Yeah. That I didn't teach him. I mean, he just watched me, Yeah. And we did the same thing. We started our own comic book. I actually, the first one, I can't even tell you the title of it, because we lost the rights to it in a very stupid way.
Oh no.
You know, what you mentioned on our last show that you'd like to go to the Comic-Con. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, to different comic shows and.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was one in Philadelphia some years ago. My son was probably maybe 10, 12 years old. He's now 32. You know.
Yeah.
We went there because he wanted to go because back then McFarlane was the big man.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh
he
yeah.
wanted his autograph, you know. So we went in there, and the line was miles long. You know that.
Oh yeah.
Visual. And as we're snaking our way through the convention center, we come past this one booth, and there's nothing in the booth but a woman, and she has a sign hanging behind her that says WB. And I said, "Boy, you still waiting for your stuff to arrive?" She says, "No, I have it all here." I said, "Oh yeah, I don't see anything," because everybody's pushing something, you know that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So she says, "Oh no, I'm from Warner Brothers. I'm here to look at portfolios." And you know me. You see me on the show, how I can be the jokester. And I turned to my son. I said, I told you I should have brought my portfolio." And he right away picks this up. He's really good at that. And she said, "Oh, you have a portfolio?" I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "I have a nice portfolio of things that I've done. Matter of fact, I've even done a few of yours, you know."
Yeah.
And she says, "Well, if I give you a pen and a pencil and a paper, can you do one for me real quick?" I said, "Sure, no problem."
Wow.
So she brings it out, and I stand there, and I start doodling. And I get all done, and she looks at it, and she says, "You know, you're right. You are good. I'm going to offer you a job, but you got to make me a promise." And I said, "What's that?" "You're going to lose that thing you just drew." And I said, "Why?" "Well, we can't have that. See, I showed Wile E. Coyote having the Roadrunner by the neck, walking through the desert and strangling him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't have that. You see, because the Roadrunner always has to win."
That's true. That's true. He always does win.
I still have it. I actually colored it in when I brought it home, and it's hanging on our wall still.
That's awesome.
You know. So she did. She took my name and everything, and sure enough, I got a thing from WB.
Yeah.
And I became an in-betweener.
Yes,
for the
animation.
cartoons on Saturday morning. And my character was, what was he called? Foghorn Leghorn?
Mm-hmm.
The big chicken?
Yes.
But they never showed you anything else on the cell. Just that character I had to do. They would send me the first and the seventh frame.
Yep.
And I had to do the cells in between. You know, so I had to look at the motion from first to seventh.
Yep.
And make sure that was taken care of.
Wow.
And then we would send them in, and if we were lucky, matter of fact, I think, who was it? Somebody one day called me and said, on a Saturday, said, "Take a look. I think your show that you did, that you showed me, is on." And I could never figure out, because here's Foghorn standing there with a bat. And as he swings, this hole develops through his body. And the chicken hawk was pitching.
Yeah.
And he threw so hard, so when he missed, the ball went through Foghorn's body and made a hole. But see, I never saw the rest of it, you know. So that was our dabbling with books, like you said.
Yeah.
And I know you got to have a heck of a time when you did that. It was, I liked it. You're right. You know what?
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't up to par, the first one, but the later one was up to par, where I gave it to the wrong person to look at, and the next thing I know, it was being published.
Oh, that's terrible.
And we didn't have it copyrighted.
So they totally stole your idea. Right out
yeah,
underneath.
Stole the idea, but you know what? So what?
Yeah.
So anyhow, let's get on with the interview here. What is in your future?
Lots of conventions, for one. Always looking to do more conventions. Our goal when I did the comic book was to make it to San Diego Comic-Con, which is like the mecca of pop culture, and it's moved away from comics. It's more of places that studios test movie ideas and TV shows now, but I still want to go out there. So I submitted my application a few months back. They said that they would start doing selections in November. I would hear back from them for table space. So that's my big thing that I'm anticipating. Looking to do Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle, maybe do Dragon Con down in Atlanta. So I'm always looking to do big shows, and I'm doing South by Southwest in Austin, Texas in March of 2014. I'm always looking to do new book covers. I'm working with somebody that the same gentleman that I did the cover redesign for that said that it really boosted his sales. He's having me do another book for him, which isn't in the series I did the first redesign for. It's a brand new concept, something that's a little bit different for him, and he's asked me to skip doing the rest of the books in the original series and pick up this project instead and see what I can do on it. So I'm really looking forward to working on that coming up. But that's about it for now, and just living life.
So you're going to San Diego as a vendor?
I'd hope to, yes. I've got my application in, and hopefully we'll get in as a vendor, yes.
Is that about the same thing? Do they do their choosing like a jury type of thing?
It's juried. It's based on a lot of things. They have to go with the popular people first. People who have had tables in the past get picked first. They almost say once you get in, never stop going.
Okay.
If it's profitable for you, because you're going to lose that spot and you're basically going to drop all the way back down.
Okay, so as long as you go, you're fine.
Exactly. They want to look for new and upcoming artists that they think will be good to fill in slots that they have open from people who drop out or they've added space to. So yeah, it's kind of, you have to put your application in and hope that your stuff is eye-catching enough where they think that you'll warrant having a table.
Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah,
hopefully. I mean, even if I don't.
You have gone to the other ones already.
I've done a lot of shows. I've done a lot of shows.
Okay.
It's every show is unique. Every show is different. I did New York Comic Con last year, which is kind of the second largest comic book show.
Okay.
And it clocked in about 115,000, 120,000 people. San Diego is bigger than that. I've done shows with 30,000 people at it. I've done shows with 137 people at it. I do all sorts of shows, and I like doing conventions. I like doing shows where I get to meet new people. I get to see my friends that are also vending at these shows, which is another reason why I do it. And I get to go stay with friends all over the country, and they put me up during these different conventions, and it's just a lot of fun. And sometimes I'd like to be on the other side of the table and walking around, and I don't always get to do that. I would say out of the 3 or 4 dozen conventions I've done in the last 10 years, I've gotten to just be a spectator at maybe 2 or 3. The rest I've all been working, and it's tough, but it's what I'm there to do, sell my art.
There you go. The one thing we forgot to mention, and I wanted to get it in between, and I kept forgetting, is you were also fortunate enough to have your art shown at a showing in Germany.
Oh yes. I was contacted late last year, early this year, by a woman from I believe the German National Museum.
Okay.
And it turns out she had done 3 separate Etsy orders from me, and I didn't think anything of it. I fill the order and I send it to the post office, and off it goes. But she was getting my artwork prepped to go into this gallery display of kind of social media and propaganda throughout the ages. Some of this stuff was 100 years old, and they had tapped 6 of my pieces in the end to go into the show, and it was kind of done chronologically, so my works were more near the end. But you never know when somebody contacts you if it's a joke, if it's real, and this turned out to be real. They sent me pictures from the show. I had a friend that lives in Germany. She actually attended the show and took pictures of my work. So it was kind of an honor, and some of my pieces went into the brochure that was handed out as advertising, and also at the show. So it's kind of a cool nod to my artwork, and I was pretty honored to be included in a show like that.
And you can't beat the price of that advertising, can you?
No, you cannot. No, you cannot. And I've sent a lot of work to Germany. I have certain countries overseas that seem to like my stuff. Australia being one, Germany being another, and the UK being another that I usually get a lot of orders from. So it's nice to be recognized outside of the United States for my work.
Well, I think part of that, being German, part of that is your style. Certainly, your style is more European. But you said you based it basically on World War II propaganda posters, somewhat. And let's face it,
and I stuck.
Germany was very heavy into that.
I know, and as I did my posters, I stuck with the Allies. I didn't do any Axis type posters for the propaganda. I tried to stick mainly to the Ally side of things, and I did one poster that was more Russian based, and I had a lot of problems with people thinking that it was Nazi art, and I had to say to them, no, this is Russian propaganda. And I actually had a lot of Russian-speaking people get angry at me because I used a faux Cyrillic. The words were all in English, but they were written in a Cyrillic font.
Right.
And I had a lot of Russian people angry at me because they were trying to translate the Cyrillic font, which was already translated into English, and it was really confusing a lot of Russian speakers. So I had to kind of put a little blurb in with the post that I did saying, hey, this has already been translated to English, this is what it says, and that cleared up some confusion. But yeah, I never did a spin on more Axis stuff. So, just because I didn't want any negative connotations with my art. And I've had people approach me and say, is your artwork political? And it's only political in the sense that it's this weird kind of politics that go into social media. There's no government behind my work. There's no, hot button topics or anything like that. It's all pop culture and social media stuff. So I try to steer clear of, anything that's really kind of heavy hitting as far as, governmental politics or anything like that.
Yeah, but see, looking at your some of your posters, even as a German, we had some that were similar, which were not the ones that were the most controversial ones. And to the Brits, you had to be, they didn't need no explanation. They certainly knew what it was all about. So that's great. That's really good. Okay, well, in conclusion, I hope that we have answered a few things for our audience today of what to do when you're stuck as far as needing a book cover, illustrations, or any kind of graphics. That, we don't discourage you from trying. And I always believed in my 7 years that I taught art that everybody has talent. You just have to extract it from yourself. I don't want to hear anybody saying, I can't draw a straight line. Well, then don't draw a straight line. Draw whatever. I always started my classes every semester out with giving them a large piece of paper and a pencil and would tell people to doodle. And when you got done doodling, I want you to look at that doodle and see if you recognize it. Because the mind does strange things with you. And I didn't even doodle for them. And yet I would sit there and say, look at this, trace this, this, and this, and this. What does it look like? Oh my God, I drew that? Well, yes, your mind drew that. Your fingers just followed your mind. So it shows that you have the talent. Erase what's in between, and you have something that you can use. So I don't discourage people from trying it. Don't try it to the point where it really gets to be, where you get down on it, and then it's time to go and find yourself a graphic artist. And which brings me to the point, Aaron, where can they find you and your art?
You can find me on just about every social media site out there. You can find me on Google Plus. Just look for my name. You can find me on Facebook. I have an artist page on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter as Just One Scarf, which is in my lower third here. You can also find me on my Etsy store, which is in my lower third. I'm also Just One Scarf on there. So, those are the four main places that you can find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can contact me through any of these sites if you're looking to, use my services, and I'd be glad to talk with you.
Okay, and definitely, I got to say, I'm familiar with Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple when you go there to find him. And correct me if I'm wrong, 71 posters you have right now on Etsy?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I have about 71 different, 70
so there's got to be something for everybody there.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, we had Aaron this past week on our SlushHeap show, and he dropped kind of a surprise for me. He's having thoughts of doing some posters for World War Z.
Yes, yeah. It's zombies are big now, so I got to kind of tap into what's big, and definitely do something along those lines. Or think about it.
And as I told you that day, when they come out, please let me know.
Let
give my son a plug. He was one of the individuals involved in creating that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the whole movie was shot in Scotland. When they did the computer graphics, they found that the backgrounds were not sufficient, so they sent two individuals here to Philadelphia, and it was my son's job to show them the best of the best, And here they were crawling around on rooftops all over the place, shooting with their $4,000 cameras, so that the CGI people in Scotland could now redo that, and what you see on film is their versions of Philadelphia.
Movie magic.
So, and it's that's what I guess he loves the most about it. So when I told him the other day that there's a possibility of somebody making a poster, he's really into that.
Yeah.
He's into posters, not the ones that are put out for the movie.
Yep.
But posters that other people do.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's all you see in his house. It's
wow.
not posters from the movie theaters. It's
yeah.
the ones that others have done, and nobody else has then,
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what he's looking for. So, like I said, it's been really a pleasure to have you on the show again.
It's good talking with you, Rudi, as always.
It's great. I hope that our audience will take a lot of information with them this time. Mm-hmm. If there's any questions that we can answer after the fact when you watch this, please write to us on show@slushheap.com and ask your question of Aaron, and we'll make sure that we'll get in touch with him, and we'll bring you that answer. Okay? Excellent. Thank you very much, and everybody have a great day.